Good afternoon. I'm Rev Dave Thompson. I'd like to welcome you to our Civil Human Bible study. I'm a civil human minister, and so what that means is that I focus my ministry on building human peace and common ground. And so I'm approaching these scriptures really in two foundational ways. And the first is that I want to be human. So I'm approaching these scriptures as a human being, looking to find those teachings that I feel are applicable across the board to all humans. And second, I want to do so in a civil manner, which means that I want to respect those shared basic human needs that we all have. The need to believe what we want to about our own creed, the need to be independent from the control of others, and to vote for those who will have control over us, the need to be intimate and intimately love somebody, and last, the need to live and let live. We've been talking in the book of Matthew. Yesterday we talked about Jesus actually stepping aside, being worn out, and hearing about the death of his cousin and friend, John the Baptist. We saw him stepping away from the crowd and taking a little break to himself and trying to get a little recharged. And then the mob of people that were trying to follow him, found him in this wilderness that he was at. And so he looked inside of himself to find this compassion so that he could love the people and actually get back to work, even though he was overwhelmed. So we're picking up right at that point. So it's basically at the end of the day, with Jesus in the wilderness, he's quite a crowd. It's going to be as much as 10,000 people, allegedly, who are now gathered around. So let's go ahead and jump into the text. It's Matthew chapter 14, verses 15 through 21. When it was evening, his disciples came to him saying, "This is a deserted place, and the hour is already late. Send the multitudes away that they go into the villages and buy themselves some food." But Jesus said to them, "They do not need to go away. You give them something to eat." And they said to him, "We have here only 5 loaves and 2 fish." And he said, "Bring them here to me." Then he commanded the multitudes to sit down on the grass. And he took the 5 loaves and 2 fishes and looked up to heaven. He blessed and broke and gave the loaves to the disciples, and the disciples gave to the multitudes. So they all ate and were filled, and they took up 12 baskets full of the fragments that remained. Now those who had eaten were about 5,000 men, besides women and children. This is one of the many miracles that are recorded about Jesus in the Christian scriptures. Matthew, who's the original student of Jesus in the first century, writes this account of Jesus. And right now what he's doing is taking us to a time where Jesus is in this wilderness area, right? He was trying to escape the crowds. The crowds followed him anyway. And now he's having to take care of their needs, basically their food and something to eat. So it's late. And that means people have got to make a decision. They're in the wilderness, and in the ancient Israel, and actually even today in Israel, in the same location around the Sea of Galilee, it's a pretty barren wilderness. There's not a whole lot there. It's largely desert. There's not a whole lot of animal life that you can eat. And so people are needing to make a decision. Do they go off to the villages, back to their homes, to get something to eat and maybe come back? Or, do they see what they can scrounge up here? And so the disciples come to Jesus and tell him, hey, what are we going to do about all these people? And as you can see, it was close to 5,000 people. And that's just the men and the women. We'll get into that sort of sexist way of counting people back then, but that'll be later on. So the disciples present Jesus with a dilemma. And what does he do, right? He tells them to gather what they have. And then they have, a few loaves of bread, a few fish. Jesus takes them up, he gives a blessing over them, and then he ends up giving out the fish and loaves to his disciples, and his disciples give it out to all of these people, 5,000 people, in fact, which is quite a substantial amount of people. And the reason why it's probably fish, fish is probably the common man's food for the most part. They're near the Sea of Galilee, which means that this is a sea that's quite large. It has a substantial, abundance of marine life. Is that the word for it, for freshwater? I don't know. Anyway, there's a lot of fish in there that they can eat. So it's likely that some people had brought some fish with them. I'd like to talk about something that, in our modern age is a bit of a dilemma, is a bit of a difficulty. One of the things that I'm trying to do as a human being approaching these scriptures is not to just assume anything, but to be honest about what I can observe and what I can't observe. And in this text, I look at this. This is Jesus allegedly feeding 5,000 people, and with 5 loaves and a couple of fish, which in any rational person's mind seems a bit irrational, right? How does it multiply? Does it just come out of thin air? Is it, and we've talked about this analogy before when it comes to miracles, is it Harry Potter where Jesus waves a wand and all of a sudden, the fish and the loaves show up? Or is it Star Trek, Jean-Luc Picard, who's going down there and asking them to replicate something and beam it down to that location? We don't know, right? So if there's an advanced life form out there that we as people of faith are claiming, then this individual or this supreme being, if he's going to be interacting with us here on Earth, even in our ancient history, the things that they're going to be able to do as an advanced species is clearly more than we can do, even now. So I'm going to leave it up to you whether you want to decide how that miracle happens. I wanted to consider yet another solution to this. And this isn't to dispel the miraculous. I'm not saying it didn't happen that way. I can't watch the YouTube video. I don't have any proof of it. I do have these claims, but it's another thing to say, yes, it actually happened just like that, and magical fish and loaves appeared. Here's another take on that. So we have the disciples gathering up what they have. Jesus takes it, gives thanks for it, and then passes it back to them and says, feed the people. So perhaps when they went out there, they broke up the 5 loaves at 12 disciples essentially. So they all go out with these pieces of bread. It's entirely possible that people who saw the fact that they were trying to feed the crowd may have already brought food with them, and some may have brought an abundance with them. They were all going into the wilderness, so they knew that they were going to have to eat something. So it's probable that they would have brought food with them. Now, it is also probable to suggest that as people began to give out of their abundance, the people who were in need and didn't have any food or any bread or fish would actually get some from the abundance or overflow of other people. And yeah, that may, in many people's minds, diminish this miracle that's happening here, but I don't think it does. I think what's amazing is how Jesus takes what is a small portion and turns it into something that's grandiose and large and solves the problem that they've got. I want to talk about a few things that I feel are really applicable in our day and age, right? This is 2,000 years removed in an ancient culture, a Jewish prophet who's talking to his Jewish common folk, his Jewish people. How in the world does that transfer to us here and now as human beings, many of us from different faiths, and many of us from a position of not even having faith? I believe that there are some substantial teachings that we can take with us and that actually matter and give us insight in how to operate as humans, to have a happy society, and to be happy as people. The first thing I want to point out is Jesus actually attends to the people's needs. He doesn't have the title is Jesus Catering Business. I was taking a little tongue-in-cheek there, but he doesn't have a catering business. This isn't his job per se, but he nonetheless takes care of the needs of the people. And sometimes we have to remember to do that. In the efforts that we're doing, we have to be reminded of the people around us and their needs, the physical common needs of our human person, whether that's food and water, whether that's security, whatever it is, that we do need to attend to those things and not forget about those realities when we're interacting with others in our society. And that's going to be important here coming up with COVID. The unemployment's drying up right now, and there's a big, chaos around this because people are beginning to worry about their food. Basically, how are they going to feed themselves or their family? This is a time where this message actually means a lot and has a huge application because we're going to have to decide how to feed people who do not have anything. The one thing that another thing I want to point out about this story, about this account, is that there wasn't much to start with. A lot of times we come at experiences in our life and we don't necessarily have the resources to solve the problem. But that doesn't mean that we shouldn't try, and that we shouldn't take what we've got and apply it to what is needed. And so even in today, when this COVID situation is happening, pay attention to the people's needs. Have compassion on them. If you see a family who may be struggling, maybe offer to take care of their needs. Even if you don't have a lot, even a small amount means a tremendous gift for those people. I do also like the fact that Jesus gives thanks. For even five loaves of bread and a couple of fish, he gives thanks for it. As a culture, many, even across the world, have accepted a practice of saying grace, we call it, or blessing the food at the beginning of a meal, and it's largely been tied to our religious experiences, but I don't know that it has to. Right? I love the fact that we can give thanks for what we have, and being in an attitude of gratitude. Sorry, that was interesting statement, but an attitude of gratitude. We are in a place where we can recognize the things that we do have, and that's an important part of our life. And when we have this small amount, to give thanks for it and to give it to other people out of our excess. And maybe in front at the dinner table, even those of us who come from faith or don't come from a faith background, giving thanks for what we've eaten is a good thing to do, especially for our hosts, those people who maybe have provided it. Saying a thank you to them for providing that food really matters, and it actually creates a strong source of happiness for those individuals. The last thing that I want to hit on before we close for the week, Jesus didn't plan, again, on catering. He didn't plan on having to feed the people, right? He's here to heal people of the sick, from their sicknesses, He's there to teach them how to have a happy life and to have a happy society. But even though it's not his job, even though that's not what he's called to do, he still feeds them. We may not have a homeless shelter that we're running. We may not, be in the custom of giving our food to other people, except it's family or good friends, right? Maybe now, in this situation, in our society, we should start to. Maybe we should start to look at how we can help people, how we can feed them, how we can help take care of their small needs, even if we don't have a whole lot to give. I guarantee you, not only will you help them feel such gratitude and warmth, you yourself, us ourselves, will find this amazing feeling of happiness and dopamine, if you want to borrow the neuroscience, but it'll give us a place of happiness. And this is what is going to make our society happy. Amid all this chaos, helping one another is how we're going to get through this. I want to thank you so much for joining me in this. I really appreciate those of you who have reached out to me individually through messages, either by email or through the messaging apps and social media. I really appreciate that. You've really helped me, even given me things that you didn't have an excess of, but that you gave to me anyway because you loved what I was doing and you loved me. And I want to say that I appreciate that so much. And you know who you are. For those of you who want to add to this conversation or who want to have get some clarification, please write a comment in below the video, and I'll try to take some time to respond to those. And other people may take time to respond. That's how we learn and grow as a society, is to learn from one another. And so Monday, live at noon, where we'll actually be posting on YouTube for the first time. So we will be there, basically from Monday on out, doing live. I want to say to you, I love you. And I do hope that you try to love yourself. It's the only love that we have any control over in this world. And now I invite you, as we go about the rest of our day and the rest of our weekend, to love our neighbors the same way. Thank you.